this is a two-way dialogue. You know, technically I'm an expert because I come from probably 50 miles away and I brought a briefcase. Okay? But I want to make this a two-way dialogue, so I just want to be a facilitator. So feel free to ask questions. Feel free to disagree. I'm not intellectually attached to any of this information. If you think you got a better way, I'd love to get that information out to others that are here as well. You already know my background. As far as this topic right here, here's the mission if we simplify the mission. Sometimes people like him need people like you. And we're talking about the kids. Because here's what we know about people, but especially kids, but people as well, just adults even. In the absence of direction in a crisis, guess what they're going to do? They're going to self-direct. But they're looking for somebody to tell them what to do or to guide them. Okay, now, as far as crisis events occurring and people that don't know what to do, guess what self-direction looks like? Yeah, it's panic and chaos. Okay? So you don't have to have initials after your name. You don't have to have a long business card title. If you know what you're doing in that sort of event and you've prepared in advance, then you need to be telling others what to do regardless. Okay? So as we go through this, I just want you to keep that in mind. We talk about the term active shooter. You hear that a lot. What we're really talking about, if we simplify that, is multiple homicides in progress. And it's really important. When we put together curriculum to deal with different crisis events, we try to look at it from three perspectives. We look at it from the first responder's perspective, the professional first responder, what are their goals and objectives on how they respond to an event, whether it be fire, crimes against persons that's in progress. We look at it from the victim's perspective, the people that are being victimized, what is their perspective, what are they trying to accomplish? And then the third perspective that often gets overlooked when we're putting solutions together is who else's perspective should we be looking at this from? Yep.
Perpetrator.
Okay, perp, as he said. Okay, you from the East Coast?
No.
Okay. Yeah, perp. Okay, we got to look at it from the bad guy's perspective. And we're going to look at this, as we go through this, we're going to look at the psychology of the attacker. What are they trying to accomplish? What are their goals and objectives? Once we understand what their goals and objectives are, then that helps us drive what our solutions need to be in terms to mitigate what they're trying to do. So as we go through this, just keep that in mind. Now, this first video I want to show you here, this is an example of somebody who had great intentions. In many of these events, when you analyze these events that occur, if you really dig into them, most of the time you're going to see there's some heroes that show up whenever these events occur. Now, very rarely do we hear about the heroes, and I'm going to talk about those folks quite a bit today. We don't hear about them as much as we should. But the other thing we need to look at is people that have good intentions, but have the wrong response. Good people that have good intentions, but guess what? They just don't know what to do. This video kind of illustrates that. And I want to kind of analyze this. This was a teacher that was at Columbine. Her name was Patty Nielsen. She was in the library. What was significant about the library at Columbine? Does anybody remember?
That were most of the victims were...
Yeah, most of the fatalities occurred. Okay, that wasn't the intention of the attackers. They thought they would be most successful in the cafeteria. We'll talk about why they were not here in just a minute. But the cafeteria was an example of what we call lockdown failure. Lockdown failed, and they didn't know what to do. And then preparing in advance ahead of time, before the attackers made it in the library, was the wrong response as well. We're going to analyze this. So let's just listen to this, and then we'll talk about a few of the learning points after.
Jefferson County 911. Yes, I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun. He was shot out of the window. I believe one.
Why did she go out into the hallway? She heard shots. Okay? But even though she heard something that sounded like shots or balloons popping or firecrackers going off, whatever it is that causes us to go out there, what did she do at that point? She heard the shots and then she did what? She went towards the hallway. Now, is that a rational response? It's not a rational response, but it's a very natural response. Why is that? Why is that? That's a natural response. Curiosity, and people make decisions primarily based on which of their five senses primarily? Their sight. So even though she heard it with her ears, she went out to confirm it with her sight. That's a perfectly natural, rational, instinctual response. That's what naturally we want to do, is gather more information to make a decision. Now, unfortunately, it's not the right response. It's instinctual to do that, but people think your instincts are the highest level of human performance. Your instincts are not the highest level of human performance. We train not to reinforce our instincts. We train to overcome our instincts. That's why we train. It's instinctual to be afraid of the dark. And all these, it's instinctual to flinch when somebody's punching you, swinging at you. We train to overcome those things so we can have a proper response. Even though she went out and she confirmed it with her eyes, which is what she was trying to do, even then, what did she think what was happening?
It was a film festival or something.
She thought it was a video production. Is that natural or rational? It's not rational, but again, very natural. Why is that? Why is that natural to think something like that, even though we have all the information to indicate otherwise?
Probably never happened there before.
It's never happened, and in a crisis, people that are not trained properly, in a crisis, they come up with all kinds of artificial, irrational reasons as to why this is occurring. Not because they don't have information to tell them otherwise, but because they're hoping this isn't happening. I hope this is a video production. I hope this is a skit. I give you example after example. Pastor over at Maryville, Illinois, just across the state line, on a Sunday morning, was assassinated on a Sunday morning in 2009. Many of the people in the congregation thought it was a skit. And it wasn't because they didn't have good information to make a good decision to tell them otherwise, but it wasn't that they thought it was a skit, they were hoping it was a skit. Okay? Another incident in a public place where a person that was shooting in a lobby, and a guy down the hallway could see the shooting taking place in the lobby, and it was a big event. They thought it was a skit. And so much so that this person thought it was a skit, he told some ladies in the hallway he'd move over, they're using paintball. And guess what? He then got shot himself. He looks down and sees his own blood, and guess what he said? He goes, yeah, they are using paintball. Go ahead and get out of the way. Because he just got shot, and he thought it was paintball what he was seeing. Okay? He could not accept it. So we have to train to overcome these sort of responses. Okay? So we're trying to learn from the past. School and law enforcement learning from the past. Because guess who else is learning from the past? Bad guys are learning from the past. And up to this point, we've been reactive in nature. We need to be proactive. And we'll talk about that here in just some of the areas. We're becoming better and better at keeping our schools more secure. Now, we can't create Fort Knox in our schools, but we're becoming better at it. But as the schools become harder targets, we feel like that they're going to transition to easier targets. Now, in a school environment, what would be an easier target than a school?
Yeah, mall.
Well, I'm talking about, if we're talking about education market. Wouldn't be the school building, what would it be?
Football stadium.
School bus, maybe. So, we have a class that talks about, it's a 3-hour class for bus drivers, teaching them, hey, first of all, on this hot concept of awareness. Buses are hard to get onto. When I was on the SWAT team, we used to do bus assaults, train for bus assaults in case hostages were taken on a bus. Guess what we found out? Buses are very difficult to get onto if you know how to leverage them against your opponent. So we got to educate bus drivers on that and this idea of awareness and paying attention to the abnormal. We know what the normal is in our environments that we're in every day. Once we know what the normal is, now we're looking for the abnormal, things that are out of the ordinary. And don't rationalize those away. Everybody here has this idea of awareness built into them. Now, another word for awareness that we talk about a lot is the spidey sense. What's the spidey sense? Come on, you can say it. You can admit to it. What is spidey sense? That's Spider-Man's superpower, right? He has the ability to predict danger in advance. We all have that built into us, but guess where most of us fall down at as far as our spidey sense is concerned? Not do we ignore it, but we actually rationalize it away. Well, that's kind of strange what they're doing. Oh, they're probably just doing A, B, or C. It's probably just a video production. We all have it built into us, but we got to pay attention to the abnormal. So let's look at the evolution of school attackers and evolution of law enforcement and school response. School attacks have been going on about the last 40 years. Is that accurate? No, how long have they been going on? Longer than that, right? In fact, the very first known school attack that we know of happened in 1764. It's in Franklin, Pennsylvania. It was the Enoch Brown School Massacre. What we had was part of the Pontiac Rebellion, a group of Indians coming by a one-room school building, and they decided to attack the school building, kill everybody inside, including the teacher, Enoch Brown. This memorial you see up here is a memorial to this event, where they located a mass grave years later of this event occurring. This event was so bad that when these Indians returned back to their village and were bragging about it, they were rebuked by their own villagers as cowards. Because it wasn't a fight, it was a massacre. Massacre is when people cannot or will not fight back. It wasn't a battle. Then we got to what we call the 9/11 for law enforcement. This is what we refer to Columbine. 1999, 15 killed, 23 wounded. Now, as bad as this event was, it could have been so much worse. We're very lucky it wasn't much worse than this. 15 killed, 23 wounded. 2 attackers with pistols and long guns, both. Up until this point, law enforcement had been trained to surround it and contain it and wait for SWAT teams to arrive. That's how we were trained. Surround it, contain it, wait for SWAT. Now, I guess where that came from? It came from 1966, an event that occurred. Anybody remember? Don't have to say you remember, just say I heard about it. What happened in 1966 as far as a mass attack? Anybody remember? How about the Texas Tower sniper massacre? Okay, 1966, got on top of the tower in the University of Texas, started killing people. A well-trained person with very capable hardware, rifles, started sniping at people off the top of the tower. Because of that event, law enforcement across the country decided we need to have well-trained officers with special equipment and call them SWAT guys. And from that point on, massive evolution across the country where SWAT teams were formed. Now that event ended in 1966 because we had 2 motivated police officers that didn't have training. All they had was revolvers and a shotgun. And that event ended because they said, you know what, I'm not waiting anymore, I'm going. And they worked their way up to the top of the tower and they took the fight to the guy and they stopped it. Even though we proved that 2 motivated officers getting in there and going to work, and if you ask one of them, we asked one of the officers that we saw at a conference one time, what was your plan? Guess what he said? He said, I didn't have a plan. My plan was to get behind my gun and go to work. I said, well, it sounds like you had a plan. That's a pretty good plan to me. And they finished it. Even though we proved on that day that that sort of a response will work, patrol officers that are on the scene, first one in, get in there and get to work. We decided to form SWAT teams, surround it, contain it, and wait for SWAT. And that mentality was so ingrained in law enforcement that this event lasted 49 minutes. Because to get a SWAT team on site, it takes minimum 45 minutes. 49 minutes first shot to last shot at Columbine. And it was so ingrained into us, one of the officers that was on the back of the building, a principal ran out of the building and approached that officer saying, I got injured people right in here. Come help me get them out. He says, well, go in and get them and bring them out to me. Not because he was scared, but because that's how we were trained. That's what we'd always done. And that's where we evolved from Columbine and saw this massive evolution. Now, Columbine could have been much worse. Our attackers, their plan and where they thought they were going to be most successful was in the cafeteria. They thought they were going to be most successful in the cafeteria. They planted 2 explosives in the cafeteria, actually 3 explosives in the cafeteria, propane tanks in the back of backpacks. And they put them next to pillars. Now, none of those explosives went off. The reason is because the propane tanks, they didn't have a chance, that was the only thing they didn't have a chance to test. They bought those tanks that morning. And their fuses and timers didn't work. The reason they didn't have a chance to test them is they were worried that they had 7 propane tanks in their basement rooms that their parents would find them. So they bought them that morning. Everything else they tested. None of those, at 11:17 a.m., those were set to go off in the cafeteria. And based on the post-incident investigation, they recreated these explosives, and they went ahead and set them off. And when they did set them off, they estimated that as a result of the explosives, many people in the cafeteria would have died, and it would have took out the pillars in the cafeteria that the explosives were sitting next to, and the library would have came down on top of the cafeteria. They estimated over 350 people would have been killed if that would have occurred. 11:17 is when those explosives were set to go off. They did not go off because they were improperly wired and the fuses were bad. They didn't go off, so at 11:19 a.m., part 2 of their plan was they went out to their cars, geared up, got their weapons, their vests, their explosives, their other explosives, cricket bombs, and some other things, CO2 bombs that they had developed. And they started to aggress the cafeteria and shoot people of opportunity. Now, even though they thought they were going to be most successful in the cafeteria, they were not very successful at all at the cafeteria. We had just a few casualties, some injured, some killed. Why is that? Well, if you had to guess, why were they not very successful in the cafeteria? People ran. Cafeterias represent, usually most cafeterias represent, there's a lot of exit points. They're able to get out of that area. Okay? What was different about the cafeteria compared to the library?
Not a lot of exits.
Not a lot of exits in the library. And what did Patty keep telling the teachers, or keep telling the kids to do over and over again?
Get under the table.
Get underneath the tables, kids. Get down. Get underneath the tables. Why is that she said that? To hide. Okay? And guess what? That's what we do for a lot of other emergency crisis events. We do it for severe weather. We do it for earthquakes. So we might as well do it in an active shooter event. That is not the right response, however. Hiding underneath tables and desks will not work. We've proved it. Not only at Columbine, we've proved it at Virginia Tech, which we'll talk about here in a minute. How many of you all seen it? Not only that, it changes the victims. It keeps the victim in a victim mindset. How many of you all seen a fight between two people and one of them's getting a tar beat out of them? Okay? That person that's getting a tar beat out of them, what position are they in? They're in a fetal position, and because that's what the body naturally does to protect itself. Nobody had to teach you. That's an instinctual response. That's what the body does to protect itself. When you're thinking like a victim and you're being victimized, you get in the fetal position. The body curls up to try to protect its vital organs. Unfortunately, when you put people hiding underneath desks, guess what position you just put them in? You put them in the fetal position, and they're going to start thinking like a victim. And we'll talk about it here in just a little bit, why that's important not to do in relation, looking at it from the bad guy's perspective. And our bad guys, they also taunted people. First shot, twice shot, 49 minutes. They taunted people in the library, coming up underneath the library, underneath the desk, and saying peekaboo to people before they shot them in the head. Here's what we know about gunshot wounds. Most gunshot wounds are survivable. Most of them are survivable. Why is it then, in many of these events, many people get killed as a result of encountering the gunman? If most gunshot wounds are survivable, why is it a lot of people in these events get killed?
Because they're close range.
Close range. There's only a couple areas on your body that you get killed quickly from a gunshot wound. Here and here. When you allow somebody to get up close and personal to you, they don't have to be accurate. That's the myth about these attackers. That they're well trained and they're tactical, and these are really capable guys. They're not. These guys don't want to fight. Why is it they picked the school, the rest home, the church?
They don't want any resistance.
Yeah, they were planning on you acting like a good little victim. Because if they're presented with a fight, they don't want to fight. If they wanted to fight, they'd show up at the police station. These guys don't want to fight. Look at the body language of these attackers at Columbine. This is, Canadians learned this from the Montreal massacre, where it took 20 minutes to get inside because they were surrounding containment waiting for SWAT. They changed their response protocols in '89. We didn't learn from that. And we changed ours in 1999. That brings us to Virginia Tech. 33 killed, 27 wounded. Remember, Columbine, 15 killed, 23 wounded. 2 guys with pistols and long guns only. 49 minutes. This one here, over twice as many killed, twice as many injured. 1 guy, on a day we set the record in law enforcement as far as response. Why is that, you think? How is it 1 guy, on a day we set the record in law enforcement, how is it 1 guy can kill that many people and injure that many on a day we set the record? How is that?
People were grouped in spaces and did run.
It's because, you're right, it's because they let him. I'm not judging them. I'm talking about good people with great intentions that just didn't know what to do. Most of them were hiding underneath desks and didn't know what to do. Yes, sir.
disturbs me, and I heard it with the video too, more than once when listening to these real life things, the police dispatcher to me encourages that kind of response. They tend to keep people calm. They say stay on the phone, which is like a ball and chain. Rarely do they give, can you escape? Do you have a weapon? You know, she's going right along with that lady saying, you know, stay calm, stay under.
Great observation. Great observation. He said it disturbs him that the dispatcher is trying to keep him calm, trying to keep him tethered to the phone, and telling him to get down. We have a course now, it's an 8-hour course where we're training dispatchers on what to tell people. And we're also training the true first responder, your first priority is not to call 911. People think when they call 911, that's their pacifier. They answered, I'm safe. Okay, that is not your first priority. Your first priority is get your area secured, or get to an area that's secured if you can't. So that's a great observation. That dispatcher, she told Patty in there, she says, is there any way you can get to the front door and get that door secured? And what'd she say? I'm afraid to. That's when that dispatcher should have said, hey, listen to me. Your ability to live or die right now depends on you doing exactly what I say right now. Get over that door and get it done. Okay? That's where she needs a kick in the pants. And she just needs somebody to motivate her a little bit. So that's a great observation. I appreciate you bringing that up. Virginia Tech, this incident started. We had a male and a female, started at 7:15 in the morning. Male and female found dead on the 4th floor. It came out as a 911 call where a female had fallen out of bed and hit her head. That's what it started at, 7:15 in the morning. Somebody heard a disturbance down in this room. They went down to the room. A female went down to the room, tried to open the door, couldn't get it open very far because there was a body next to the door. She didn't know what it was. She just knew something was preventing the door open. She looked in and saw a female laying next to her bed with blood coming out of her head. She thought, she must have fallen out of bed and hit her head. It's in a college setting. Calls 911. Police come with the ambulance. When they get there, they see they got a male and a female victim dead of gunshot wounds. What was their first assumption when they see this? Murder-suicide, okay? Got some CSI fans in here. Okay? Thought it was a murder-suicide. Now, they couldn't find a gun initially, but when a person commits suicide, many times, where does the gun end up? Next to him or under him. So they can't move the body, so they're assuming the gun's underneath the male because they're going with the odds of who it is. So they did their investigation. While they did their investigation, remember this started at 7:15 in the morning. From 7:17 a.m. to 9:26 a.m., they did their investigation. Witnesses reported an argument between a female and a male. They assumed this was a lover's quarrel and thought it was murder-suicide until they moved both bodies after they took pictures and everything, and they couldn't locate a gun. So they're like, uh-oh, we got a gunman on the loose. While at the same time, on the female victim's computer, they saw on her screensaver a picture of her boyfriend at a firing range. And by the way, this dead guy right here isn't her boyfriend. So now what are they assuming?
Boyfriend.
Uh-oh, boyfriend walked in. By the way, the male suspect, he was in his underwear. He was in his underwear in this event. Turned out he was the resident assistant on the floor. He heard a ruckus down in the room. He went down to see what was going on. He became a victim himself. So they assumed that the male boyfriend showed up, saw these two together, and killed them both. So they put an attempt to locate out for the boyfriend and his name and his truck. While they're doing their investigation, of course they take photos. While they're doing their investigation, they locate the boyfriend driving back towards the campus. They stop him. While they were doing their investigation, they went ahead and activated 2 SWAT teams. They activated the Blacksburg, Virginia SWAT team, as well as the Virginia Tech SWAT team. Virginia Tech Police Department had their own SWAT team. Why? Because the campus had 40,000 kids on it. It's its own little city. Activate both SWAT teams so when they find the boyfriend, they can take him into custody. So as soon as he gets stopped in his car, guess what happened with our SWAT teams? They went swarmed over to where the car stop took place. Turns out he's very cooperative. This was about 9:26 a.m. He's very cooperative. He's answering questions saying, hey, I heard my girlfriend's been shot. I came back over to the campus because I just dropped her off at 7 a.m. He dropped her off at 7 a.m. 15 minutes before she spent the night with him the night before. She dropped her off 15 minutes before she became a victim. At 9:46, 20 minutes after he stopped while they're questioning him, at 9:46 a.m., this is 2.5 hours after the initial 2 homicides, 911 calls start coming in from Norris Hall. Norris Hall is an engineering hall. It's the oldest building on campus. It's the only building on campus that does not have doors that lock from the inside. Okay, raise your hand if you're in schools that have some doors that don't lock from the inside. Okay, got some sheepishly raised hands. Okay. No, hey, and if you do, don't worry about it. We're going to show you some ways that we teach people all the time how you can get doors secured that don't even have a lock on them. Some easy ways that we can get those doors secured. Threat outside lockdown, building administrator, their designate, or anyone who's been trained to make the lockdown announcement. Why is it we're saying anyone who's been trained versus just the building administrator or their designate? Exactly. Time is the key. The enemy of a successful lockdown is time. That means if you've trained your people, we're going to say anybody who's been trained can call for lockdown. The downside, if they call for lockdown, we shouldn't have as inconvenience, maybe some unnecessary fear caused. But the downside of not getting the lockdown quick enough is life and death. Designated personnel are those closest locked exterior doors, put hallways, restrooms, and other rooms that cannot be secured. Restrooms are a very common place for people to run to in a crisis event like this. Why is that? Huh? Well, in public schools, a lot of the restrooms cannot be locked. They're a very common place for people to run to because that's where we go for severe weather, and it's kind of a cave. It kind of seems safe in there, but it's one of the worst places you can go. Can't get out of it. It's hard to lock out, and there's very little you can fight back with in there. Roll of toilet paper. Okay? And we do scenarios all the time with schools, and I showed up with the gunman in the scenario in the hallway, and I saw 4 or 5 group of teachers after the lecture, and they ran into a restroom, and I went down there, and as I was going into the restroom, I heard the teachers in there say, "Oh, you did not come in here." And I'm like, yes, I did. It's too late. But they're going to learn from that scenario. They won't go in there again. We've got to clear this hallway. The restroom's out. We can take attendance, account for all persons within the room, control movement. We can continue activities in a threat outside lockdown. Continue, but we're not going to have, we call it restricting movement. Even on the hall, when the bell rings, we're not going to have classes move until that threat outside lockdown is done. Once the threat is over, we're going to give the all clear code. The all clear code. We said not to use all codes. Why are we using the code for all clear versus not going into lockdown? Versus plain English and going into lockdown? Any guesses? Yeah. Sure, we get on the intercom and say all aliens and free. Okay? So we're going to use an all clear code. One of the codes we recommend is all clear green, all clear green. Remain in lockdown until contacted by an administrator and a member of law enforcement. That means they're going to stay in lockdown until they're contacted individually at their room to come out of lockdown. Other considerations, we've got to pay attention to the classes that are taking place outside the building. Got to have a way to communicate to those folks, let them know there's a threat outside. They would appreciate it if you let them know. For a threat inside lockdown, same thing. Administrator, designate, or anyone who's been trained to make the announcement. Direct student staff to the nearest classroom or secured space. Classes that are outside the building should not enter the building. Why? Because that's where bad things are happening. But again, they will not know this unless we communicate to them. They're going to come into a building that's been locked down. They can't get into any security areas. Now they're in the hallway with the gunman. We're going to have a way to communicate and let them know. PA systems, radios. Move outside classes to the primary evacuation site. Lock classroom doors. Do not lock exterior doors. Any guesses why? If they're already locked, don't worry about it. Let the bad guys out. Let the good guys in. The good guys will get in if you don't expose yourself and go out and lock the doors if they're not, or not unlock them if they're already locked. Good guys, you may have the imprint of a Crown Vic on your door, but they're still going to get in. Okay, take attendance. Now, here's a couple that are tough. We're going to teach our staff, do not respond to anyone at your door once you're in lockdown. That's a tough one. Somebody comes pounding on your door, let me in, he's coming, he's coming. We're going to train teachers not to let them in. Why? It could be the gunman, or it could be the gunman holding a gun to somebody's head, making it. It's a math problem at that point. It's tough to think of it that way, but it is. We got 25 people in this room, we got one outside. That's a math problem. That's tough. Nothing wrong with telling them, hey, down the hallway to your right, there's an exit door. That's an alternative to that. Keep out of sight. When we're in lockdown, we're going to ignore the fire alarm. Why? That guy can go pull the fire alarm and get people out of lockdown easily. Here's the deal, and we do this in training in scenarios as well. During lockdown, they're doing good at lockdown training, and all of a sudden we go pull the fire alarm in the middle of one of the lockdown scenarios. And maybe 10% of the time, people turn into these lazy-eyed robots, single file. And they come out of their lockdown, maybe 10%. We can work through those issues in training though. And we say this, as far as fire and smoke is concerned, first of all, here's the stats. We haven't had a child killed in a school fire in 50 years. As far as fire preparedness, we are doing a great job. We're building buildings not to burn, and we got good fire evacuation. We haven't had a child hurt in a school fire in 25 years. We're doing a great job of that. But we're getting dozens killed every year, and so we've got to balance the two. When the threat is over, the intruders left the building, we're going to make the all clear announcement. Okay? Now, we've talked about lockdown, so let's talk about what to do when lockdown fails. We advocate this right here, a 3-out approach to lockdown and lockdown failure. Okay? 3-out approach. It's lockout, get out, and take out. Take out means fight back. Lockout, get out, take out. Now, what lockout, get out, and the 3-out approach is not, it's not a linear stair-step model. It's not, well, we got to teach our folks, they're always going to try to lock out first, and they're always going to get out if that doesn't work, and they're going to fight back if that doesn't work. This is a non-linear model. What I mean by that, that's going to be your response on one of those 3 outs is going to be determined by this right here. Is the threat an immediate or indirect threat? That combined with your location is going to determine which of those outs you're going to use, which of those proper responses you're going to use.